and it's time for another matchup in the first round of the Cheap Lager Championship. Let's have a look at the table. So here's the table. The first half of quarterfinals have now been filled, and if you remember in the last one, it was incredibly close. We had the Brewdog Cold Lager, which was all right, against the Excelsior from Lidl, which again was all right. They were both, I'd say, half decent. So it's very hard to decide which one went through. So I've ended up putting the cold beer lager through, but I've said the Excelsior will be going through as well, and it will be taking the place of the weakest lager, I think, or the worst lager, probably in the bottom half, unless there's one of the ones in the top half that's worse than the ones in the bottom half. It's going to take the place of whichever the worst quarter-finalists in the bottom half is. Okay, so there'll be one matchup where neither beer will essentially go through and be replaced by the Excelsior, because it isn't fair that the Excelsior doesn't get through to the quarter-finals, because it was quite a decent lager. And compared to some of the rubbish that I've been tasting in the first, in the other matchups, the Excelsior definitely needs a place in the quarter-finals. Otherwise, this championship's just going to be absolutely rubbish. Anyway, that said, we are now in the bottom half of the table, and we're going to start off with the first matchup in the bottom half of the table. And wow, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be a matchup against the good old Skol Lager. Wow, this has been around for quite some time, and that'll be up against this, which I always thought this was like the Jaguar Lager, the really like 1% beers that they used to have. Which was about 4 cans for £1 and that kind of thing, but it doesn't appear to be. No, it's 3.4% ABV, 4 cans for £2.30. These I think were 4 cans for £2.50, so we're right at the bottom end of the cheap lager scale here. But they both pretty much fall in the thing. This is 2.8%, so it's a little bit out of what I was originally thinking for this. But you can't not have Skol in a cheap lager championship, and let's face it, it is the original cheap lager is Skol, so you've got to have that. Not sure what this Ashfield lager is going to be like with these supermarket own brand things. They could be decent, they could be absolute rubbish. I really don't know. But there you go. So yeah, we've got the Ashfield lager, we've got the Skol lager. We're going to get these tasted, we're going to get these tested, and we're going to see which one goes through. Okay, beer's poured. And this one is poured with bigger head than this one. The head has dissipated very quickly indeed. So there's not much head left. Getting smell, I'm not sure if I can get a bit of a dishwasher smell out of this. Anyway, we'll have a see. I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll get a bit of a head coming back there to tell what these smell like. We get a bit of a dishwasher smell from something, which hopefully that doesn't affect the test. We'll see. Anyway, what can I say? Let's tell the people at home which is which first. So this is which one is which. Okay, that was which one was which. Okay, now I'm going to start looking at them. So let's have a look at them. This one has got significantly larger amount of bubbles coming up to the top. That one, very few bubbles coming to the top. Implies this looks like it might be quite gassy, but we'll see how it goes. You know which one's which, I don't. Looking at the colour, they're both a similar colour. Pale straw with a bit of amber, as a lot of these beers are. Okay, let's get the nose on it. There's no point looking at it anymore. Oh, I'm getting a smell of that, yeah, good, so that's fine. So smells quite fresh. Get a little bit of malt in there. They're all very generic smelling, these lagers. Really, I've not got the same standards as I had in the other championships. Really, this is really just thinking, is it even half decent at this stage? But that is getting. I'm getting a decent amount of malt coming out of that. It's a little bit of grassiness. Get a little bit bitter, like. In the smell, it's alright. That's okay. That's got a bit of a smell to it. Let's try this one now. So I'll move the glass of water out of the way. So let's just see. That one's a little bit fruitier. Bit of lemon, but almost like lemon sherbet. There's a sweet note in there, but quite an artificial sweet note, almost like drumstick lollies. That kind of sweetness. It's I don't know, but it does put me in mind of some of those kind of more craftier lagers that I was doing in the Ultimate. but very sweet and very fruity. Pear drops. Yeah, getting kind of pear. Anyone knows pear? Do they still do pear drops? I don't know, but anyone remembers pear drops? Strong whiff of pear drops in there. Not a good smell, I don't think, with beer. That kind of confectionery kind of smell just smells artificial to me. But yeah, interesting. I have no idea which one could be which out of these, but I'm not getting any dishwasher smells out of either of them, so that's good. But I'm getting very strong pear drops for this one. This one's smelling more traditional. I'm getting bitter malt. Neither of them smell like they're going to have much of a taste, but we will see. I've got the water back so I can have a bit of a swill before I start. But we're going to get tasting. Here we go. Let's try this one. Cheers. Okay, so we're back to the normal with the light taste. Not a lot of taste. There's bitterness. Not a very pleasant bitterness, no. So we've got bitterness, but it's lingering around. It's not a great bitterness. It's not like, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's that pleasant a bitterness, really. It's not great, but there's not really much else there to balance it out. A little bit of flavour in there. Just kind of like a generic lager stroke bitter flavour, really, that. I think if you had your eyes closed and someone gave you this, you wouldn't know if it was lager or bitter. It has got that kind of... It's where the cheap bitter and the cheap lager just kind of cross over. Let's try this one now. Cheers. So that one is fizzier. Again, not much in the flavour. Getting a bit of that confectionery sweetness in the flavour there. But yeah, very light in flavour indeed. It's... I think I know which one I'm putting through. Yeah, that's got flavour, that's not. That's smooth, that's fizzy. That's got a horrible smell, that's not. It's very generic-y lagery flavour with a little bit of generic bittery flavour in it, but it has got some flavour. Yeah, it's definitely got some flavour in there. There are some slight toffee notes in there. It's definitely not the worst beer that's in the quarterfinals, I don't think, this one. And in fact, if you hold it in your mouth a little bit, it has got some slight fruity vibes almost. Some bit of apple in there maybe. Something that you might associate with a real ale, or something that you might get like from a Lakeland pub or something. So dare I say, there's a little bit of complexity there. It's weird. It's a very light flavour, very light indeed, which of course at the low alcohol levels that these are, you're going to get quite a light flavour. But I do think there's a bit of complexity to the flavour here. I am actually getting some other flavours in there, so I'd say that's a big win for this one. It's a slam dunk for this one. This is way better than this one. That one is a bit too gassy, a bit too fizzy. The only flavours I'm getting is that rather unpleasant sweetness that it's giving me. That's the only flavours I'm getting with that, really. again, I think if I had my eyes closed, I don't think I'd know this was supposed to be a lager. I would almost think this would be a really, really rubbish alcohol-free pale. That's the best way of describing it. Someone gave me this, literally blind, where I couldn't see it, I didn't know anything about it, I would possibly guess either a just a really, really cheap alcohol-free pale, the ones that have got very little flavour. Not even an alcohol-free lager, because alcohol-free lagers have that kind of horrible taste that they all seem to have. And this doesn't have that, but it does have that kind of where they try and make a pale alcohol-free by taking all the taste out of it. That's what this tastes like, basically. Which, if it's the Skol, which I think it might be, then, well, it's 2.8%. So what do you expect? Although it might not be. I can't remember. I've not had Skol for so many years. I mean, you know, why would I? I've never had the other one before. The more I drink this, the more I'm liking it, actually. And I know that the Ashfield, is it? The Tesco brewers, they have a bitter that looks just the same as the lager, and it's almost like I reckon they'll taste quite similar. And this, to me, tastes like a lager that's brewed by the people who are doing like a generic lager and generic bitter, just at a low price point. And at £2.30 for 4 cans, if that's what this is, it's not half bad for that, I don't think. I know I said it was like where a cheap lager and a cheap bitter cross over, but to be honest, it tastes like beer. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you really fish for those flavours, you are getting some nice flavours. It's almost a bit like the Excelsior. It is quite good, quite impressive. There we go. Slam dunk for this one. I'm going to guess this is the Ashfield, and I'm going to guess this is the Skol, but I really don't know. I think the last time I had Skol, it was about 3.5%. It wasn't 2.8, so it could have changed a lot since the last time I had it. Anyway, no more waffling. I'm going to find out if I was right, because if it's the other way around, it'd be very interesting indeed. Results are in, and yeah, I was right. This is the Ashfield. Yeah, to look at it, knowing this is not the absolute bog standard, you know, like Jaguar equivalent. If everyone remembers Jaguar lager, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They used to have them like 4 cans for £1. That's how cheap they were, and they were just stupid. They were just not lager in the slightest. There's no point in having them at all, like 1% ABV. Knowing that this wasn't that level of beer, I just pictured this being a rather generic tasting lager, and it is. It's a rather generic tasting lager, but it does have taste. It does have taste to it. This, on the other hand, I don't know what on earth they were thinking with this. I mean, it's always been the lowest ABV lagers. When everything else was 4.5%, 5%, this was, or 4.8, this was still in the 3s. Skol's always been the weak alternative, but for them to move it down into the 2s just because everything else is going down into the 3s is just, what is the point? Yeah, I'm getting something out of that, but most of the things I'm getting there is a little bit of metallicness, that weird pear drop sweetness, and none of the flavours that you would associate with a lager, really. You know, now that I've been drinking some really decent lagers, I know what a good lager is supposed to taste like, and most of these just don't taste like it. They don't have any of those flavours. I mean, maybe I've been naive for so long to assume that lagers, even cheap lagers, would have some kind of lager flavours there, but they just don't. They just really don't. There's the Ashfield. There is flavour there. Yeah, I mean, it's got a bit of a dryness as well. There's a bit of metallicness there. It's not good by any means, but it is half decent. It's half decent. That's pleasing me a bit. I wouldn't recommend going out and get it unless you want 4 cans for £2.30. Unless that's your price point, I wouldn't recommend going out and getting this. Really, I wouldn't recommend going out and getting any of these. Really, possibly the cold beer lager because it's different. Possibly the Excelsior because is a little bit better, but really, if you've got the money to get something decent, there's far more recommendations that I've got out there. I would go one price point up in the Lech kind of dab, kind of Tyskie kind of area of beer. But you know, if you're on a price point, I'd say that's not too bad. This is bad. This is bad. It was dearer than this, and it's rubbish. This is better than the Morrison Zone. So the Morrison Zone one I had, this is way better than the Morrison Zone. So it's interesting. It is restoring my faith a little bit. So far now, out of the last 4 beers I've tasted, yeah, there is a bit of toffee malty tastes there. And yeah, the warmer that's getting, the more flavour I'm getting from it. It's got a bit of bitterness. And now I'm getting more of the other flavours. That bitterness is a bit more pleasant. There's no aftertaste to speak of, but you are getting quite a bit of flavour. As that is warming up, I'm getting quite a bit of flavour from that. I am surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised with that. Yeah, this one and the Excelsior and, well, the Cold Beer Lager, they are heads and shoulders above the rest at the moment. That is definitely going to be staying in. That's not going to be replaced with the Excelsior. This is absolute tosh. If that was going through, that would be replaced by the Excelsior anyway. That is not. That's not going nowhere near me. That's not nice. Is that the worst one so far? I don't think so. I think the Morrison's Continental do well to get worse than that. The Carling was an absolute abomination. But the Ashfield Lager is not. The Ashfield Lager is okay. And to be honest, if you just want a cheap lager, I would recommend this over a Carling or a Carlsberg any day of the week. Every single time, this would be my recommendation. Would I recommend it over a Foster's? I've no idea. I've not reviewed the Foster's yet, and it's been quite a few years since I last had one. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. I'm going to finish it, draw it to a close. I am feeling a little bit more positive about this. The last 2 taste tests I've enjoyed a little bit more. Hopefully as I get to the quarterfinals, I might make a couple of adjustments just to make my quarterfinals a little bit more interesting. If there's anything that just doesn't deserve to be there, it might get replaced with one that got knocked out that does. But we'll see. Again, it's a quest to find decent things. I'm not going to put myself through hell just to make it fair in a knockout perspective. Anyway, right, there we go. Let's do it. Till next time. Have a good one.